Hey friends, welcome to Your Story Matters podcast. My name is Michaela, and I am so happy you're here. My hope for this show is that we experience the power of storytelling and understand that we are the main characters in our story so that we can live as our truly authentic selves. You're in the right place to hear real stories that will challenge, inspire, and encourage you on your personal growth journey. I hope you enjoy. Today on the show is Leslie Muhlbach. Leslie believes nothing is more valuable than her human experience, than a deep understanding of the power of storytelling. She contends the same courage it takes to give voice to our own stories also requires us to listen with compassion and curiosity to the stories we are being told and the ones we tell ourselves. Recovering from a near-death experience, navigating the challenges of parenting and caregiving, and making the difficult decision to step away from a successful career shape Leslie's unique stories about facing fear, listening to what really matters, and awakening to the call of our deepest desire for connection. Leslie is currently nurturing her creative lifestyle by leading workshops and retreats, exploring documentary filmmaking, writing poetry and essays, and public speaking. Leslie's mission to inspire a deeper curiosity about the nature of authentic human connection. She explores topics that challenge us to ask provocative questions, reevaluate the stories we own, and collaborate to co-create what is needed to help heal the human story. Here's my conversation with Leslie. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Your Story Matters podcast. I'm so happy to be here with you today, and I am equally, if not more, as happy to be joined by fellow Ohioan Leslie Muhlbach. Leslie, welcome so much to the show.
Thank you so much, Michaela, for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Hadn't even started. I'm thrilled. So we recently found out that we live 2.5 hours away from each other, which is hysterical because we have guests from all over on here. So just the joy of finding another Ohioan is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Right. Ohio, born and raised. And I can't seem to
Yes.
leave no matter how many times I try to just follow this calling to get out. I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
I love it.
Good. I've done a little Northeast Ohio track for the last 10 years. I kind of have just done a small, only have really lived like over an hour from home every which way I've gone, but I've kind of just done this little tour,
Nice.
which is so funny because like I'm trying to get out if I need to realize like I need to come back kind of thing. But for right now, it's a good place to be.
I think so too.
Yeah, it's good. All right, so let's just get into it, shall we? Leslie, what's your story?
I think that is the most challenging question. And I'm sitting at this really interesting transition in my life. I just turned 53. And
Happy birthday.
Hey, thanks. It feels good. I love it. I'm really enjoying my 50s so far. So, but when you think about your life story, it's really, I think, normal to go back in time and like start at the beginning. And I really I'm going to do that a little bit in the opposite direction. I want to take it backwards.
Go for it.
Because, I think I've had probably the most growth and just expansion of really understanding my place in the world and kind of how I want to move in the world, moving into this phase of my life, just based on the most recent events of my life. So I'm here in Columbus. My story is that I am a recovering workaholic. I also at this really pivotal awakening. I can't think of a better word because that's just what's happening as far as how I spent the first half of my life and how I want to move into the later half of life. So I'd say my current story is that I'm this wonderfully passionate and creative communicator. And I love teaching, but what teaching is looking like in my life right now is taking a very different turn. So I taught in the public high school classroom for about 30 years. I taught communication, taught public speaking, performing arts, a little bit of theater. And I also coached competitive debate. And so I helped build and led a very successful program that was nationally recognized. And it's work I'm very, very proud of. But I just got a really strong calling about 3 years ago to step out of that space. And A lot of people leave careers because of burnout or because of, they just leave a space because they have a sour taste in their mouth and it's just not really working out for them. And I did not have that experience. I loved teaching. I loved my job. I loved the classroom. I loved teaching high school kids, despite I know it's hard for people to believe that I actually loved teaching high school, but I did. But there was just something, I think in teaching public speaking, what I realized is that so many people fear public speaking, and there's so much performance anxiety and so much stage fright and so much of this just deep rooted fear because of how we think other people are going to perceive us and receive us. And I was teaching these strategies for how to, work with this fear and really befriend it and kind of come to a place where you really understand your own personal story and not worry so much about what other people's stories will look like about who you are. But
That's
in
good.
teaching that with all my students, I was realizing that I was doing a lot of teaching of what I was not living.
Mm,
There were a lot of just I guess my creative juices were just bubbling and boiling in a different place. And here I realized that I was afraid myself to kind of take this bigger leap into a space of the unknown. So, I mean, I've been coaching and teaching since, my early 20s. I didn't really know anything else, but I've always wanted to write. I've always wanted to get into filmmaking. I've always wanted to start my own podcast. I've always wanted to do these
yes.
things. And yeah, I think I just felt a little bit hypocritical when I would sit and listen to my heart. I was the wind beneath the wings of all of these students who are going out into the world and really facing their fears. But I was not really doing that myself.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I stepped away from the high school classroom 3 years ago. I resigned. And after spending a year curating this perfect exit strategy, what I thought was the perfect exit strategy, created my own LLC and started designing workshops and opportunities for me to still teach public speaking, but do it in a different way. And I can get more into that, I guess, a little bit later. I've been a yoga teacher, a certified yoga teacher for quite some time, and I teach a lot of workshops and in wellness spaces. So I would do a lot of interpersonal communication and interpersonal relating workshops, and then also how we relate to ourselves. But I would do that in yoga studios and wellness spaces at different yoga retreats. And I was being asked to be a guest speaker and curate these workshops. And I loved that. So it seemed like a natural fit that would be the direction I would move to when I left the high school space. But then shortly after resigning, my mom's health took a turn. So my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer about 10
Mm,
years ago. And it just seemed so interesting. And I have faith that all of these callings and the directions I'm being pulled to are definitely by a higher power and spirit guides me to be where I need to be. And so as soon as I stepped out of the high school classroom, it's like my mom's health really took a dive. And I've been spending time as her primary caregiver for the last couple of years. And she unfortunately passed in March of this year. So my story's been filled with, most recently it's just been filled with a lot of grief, a lot of fears about what my life will look like without my mom, who was my
yeah.
best friend.
Yeah.
I also caregive now for my dad who has advanced stage Alzheimer's. So a lot of fear about, how do I manage the family's affairs and, being in charge of a family estate and taking care of my parents' life's earnings, and it's been a lot of fear that I have faced. And then ultimately the embracing just being still,
Mm,
which for most of my life was a huge fear of mine. I did not
yeah.
do well with stillness. And I have learned so much in the past just 18 months about the power of pause and stillness and kind of the undoing and stepping into a being space instead of just constantly motoring through the doing space.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I want to go to another big question that we can kind of dissect everything. What is fear? How do we define beyond being scared of like clowns and sharks? What is it actually doing inside of us to make us kind of have these visceral reactions to things?
Well, I did not coin this acronym at all, but I definitely feel that fear presenting itself, false evidence appearing real. I don't know if you've heard of that acronym used before, but yeah, so I'm not the first one to embrace that. But if it's not broken, you don't have to fix it. So I just really, the workshops that I create and the spaces for talking about fear really are all based on understanding that fear really is false evidence appearing real. So it's, coming to terms with what is not true is really challenging, I think, for a lot of people, especially now. um you know, when we're looking at our feeds, our social media feeds, the advertisements that we're being force fed, and just the constant narrative that you are not enough just as you are, that there's a lot of false energy, I guess, that is pulling us away from really being comfortable with who we are and what we have.
Yeah, that's so good.
So just the ability to kind of evaluate that evidence that
Yeah.
is fed to you, and then also, like, why is it appearing real? Why does this present itself? And why is it so challenging for me to discern sometimes? And which parts of our ego are really grasping and kind of bringing to light our attachments and all of the things that we think we might need in our life. And if you can kind of move through that process of evaluating the evidence and understanding which parts of you are responding to that, which parts of me are really buying into that, and buying into those narratives, because that's the part of me that I really want to get more in touch with and have a better relationship with.
I love that. I just wrote that down. Which parts of me are buying this narrative? That's
Yeah.
so good. I haven't even thought to look at that before to really, dissect. And I think I wasn't diagnosed with anxiety, but I take anti-anxiety medication after a really tough year, 2024. And I'll ask myself when certain things like come up, when I kind of feel some stuff bubbling, I'll be like, okay, what's wrong? What are we afraid of? What are we uncomfortable with? And so all of it is really just checking in, with yourself. But again, if we don't know the right questions to ask, I sometimes think fear just will, be that cyclone. And we've all left Kansas at this point. Who the heck knows where we're going? But hopefully to some Yellow Brick Road is the goal of that. I don't know if it's the actual reality, right? How can we start, being more aware of how we're seeing this fear show up? Because sometimes it doesn't show up as fear, but there's definitely an avoidance, a shutdown sometimes, or just, generalized anxieties about things. So, what can we do to kind of check in with ourselves?
Well, I think definitely having a strong practice of contemplation and self inquiry. So, the world is very fast paced, or it wants us to be, because the more time that we have to actually pause and breathe and get grounded and find our center, then the less likely we are to feed into these other narratives. And of course, buy all the products and buy all the things and get all of the external help that we think we need in order to move through those situations. When that fear, when it arises and bubbles, like you said, yeah, having a strong practice of self inquiry and really understanding that we are, there's a totality of who we are in our wholeness, but that whole is still made up of, we're still puzzle pieces. So I think really understanding, getting keenly aware of the different parts of me that, which Leslie is showing up afraid in this moment. which version of Leslie? Is it the 7-year-old Leslie,
Mm.
12-year-old Leslie? Um, Not that you always want to be fixated on your past experiences, but it does help a little bit to bring you into the present to understand really like who is showing up right now and what is she hearing.
Mm.
And you don't always have to know why. You don't have to get caught up, I think, in the pathology of all of it. Well, I'm showing up this way because it was a trauma, or this was how this showed up in my past. I think recognizing that can be important, but understanding like, well, what does that version of Leslie need right now from me? Because I already have everything that I need. So the process of self-inquiry and then really taking time to contemplate and understand your own toolbox that you have. Because I really do believe that we do have everything we already need to help guide us through these really fearful experiences. And when it feels like the world's closing in on us, or it feels like we don't have options, we do have all of those tools. We just don't always know how to get grounded and centered in order to activate that and access those tools.
And I think part of that is because we've been so conditioned to be human doings, right? In this culture of productivity, in this culture of more is more, there almost isn't a built in way of being, of walking into stillness, being grounded, and taking some space. And I think when people hear that, they're like, oh, I have to become Buddhist and I have to go on these silent retreats and kind of we go extreme, right? Where it's like, no, you can maybe take 2 minutes in the morning and just don't have any sound on, just do a couple of deep breaths. So it's much easier than we realize, but I think we always just go grandiose. At least I think sometimes too. But how are we able in a world that wants us to be human doings? You just said in your story, recovering workaholic. So kind of what was your aha moment of, hey, I need to slow down a little bit?
I think it was just the breakdown of my body. That's literally what was happening. And um I was run over by a car at a music festival
Gosh.
20 some years ago. So it was shortly after my son was born.
Yeah.
And I had to be life flighted, and I had extensive back injuries, a lot of chronic tissue damage, fractured vertebrae and ribs. And at the time, they weren't certain I was going to make it through that. And I did. But um, I think, I wasn't officially diagnosed with PTSD, but there's trauma there, obviously, that I just felt like life is so short. I went to a music festival and my life almost ended in that weekend excursion. And my son could have been without his mother for the rest of his life because of someone's, drinking and driving. And so it really hit me hard that life is so short, and I just kicked into hyperdrive and was just, I have to accomplish all these things. I don't know. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. I better show up every day like 120%. And for the next 2 decades of my life, that was just how I functioned, was just like burning the midnight oil. And, I don't even know how I survived all of these years on like 3, 4 hours of sleep. I was, there's an interesting catch there because my work would not have been as uh, I would not have been as successful. And, we won all these awards and we had state championships. And my team, I traveled with, sometimes 50 high schoolers all over the country competing in competitive speaking contests. And so I know that the program grew and was really, really successful and gained a lot of recognition because of all of the work that I was doing. But you can only work for that long like that, and my body just gave out. And I'm a yoga practitioner, love working out. I'm mountain bike and I rock climb and I love swimming and paddleboarding. I'm really physically active, and my body was just like done. It was just it was screaming to me. I had digestive problems, problems with sleep, blood pressure. And I think that's when I really just started listening to my body. So
That's good.
yeah, the relationship that I have really committed to listening to my body has changed everything. And I call
Mhm.
it a remembering and a coming home to
Yeah.
just the natural cycles
Mm.
my body is designed to follow, especially as a woman.
Yeah, definitely. That's so good. So good. Well, I'm glad that you were here very much. And yeah, what a story and how resilient. And it's such an inspiration and just even beyond that, just the simple reminder of listening to our bodies. I don't know if we know how to do that without kind of going into like woo woo land where you
Okay.
have all of this like
I get woo-woo with
Eastern.
most of them. It's all right.
Right, right. With all the Eastern world, techniques kind of in Western minds are a little bit, out there, but it's like, hey, they're onto something. I truly think that. So how has it looked like for you over the last few years of being still? How was it from a go, go, go mentality to now making space for just being? What was that like for you?
It's beautiful. It's not always easy. It's not easy at first. But once once the space is created and once you give yourself I kind of see it as being this little bubble. It's like here's Leslie's bubble. And then once that starts to just grow and expand and get a little bit bigger and I feel more comfortable inside of my bubble and I actually can, there I can move and I can breathe and not feel suffocated and feel so small. It feels really, really good. Again, I don't know how I would have been able to navigate the last couple of years of being with my mom had I not been called to, step away from that doing, and really just yeah, listen to my body. When it needs rest, I give it rest. When it needs movement, I give it movement. And just making everything a really sacred ritual with how I interact with myself really how has expanded my relationships with other people too. So unfortunately, what does happen is, a lot of our doing spaces also are our social circles too. And so
Mhm.
it can be very challenging and difficult to watch people kind of fade out of your life because they're used to doing things with you. They're not used to just being with you. And so it can feel very lonely. It can feel very lonely, but I think what fills that space then is rather than people who are your friends out of convenience because of the convenience of where you work or, maybe your kids share similar activities and so you're friends that way. But once those kind of superficial connections fade away, you're creating a lot of space for other deep, deep, deep connections. And if spiritual work is something that is very important to you, which to me it is, there's so much more space in my life now for me to have connection with nature, connection with my spiritual guidance, and connection with reading. I have so much more space now to actually read and connect with, and I was coaching debate. And so all I did was read the news and keep up on politics and, just reading academic work for so many years that now I'm just really back into like my library. Those are all my best friends, my books on my shelves.
Yep. Yep. Mine too. Yes. Yes. It's
So I
so
can
good.
Yeah, and really get back to just like consuming stories, other people's stories of their lived experience as human beings that are just so moving and so filled with love and compassion. And that's what I choose to consume these days.
Yeah. It definitely is needed with all of the politicalness that has surrounded us, unfortunately, a little bit much more than I think we ever wanted or need, right? Sometimes we're not made to consume everything. And if anyone's been around this podcast for longer than 5 seconds, I have a couple lines that I say all of the time, tried and true. I should just get them tattooed. But one of them is like, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And so a lot of people think that all of the time taken to be still, to take a walk, to maybe let go of some relationships for a season or whatever is so selfish. You're focusing on you. And I'm like, no one else is going to take care of me, in that aspect of clearing your mind, having a good relationship with your body, knowing what serves you, right? And so I think you kind of go through a couple things in life, whether it is body related or family related, whatever. And you're like, you know what? I think I've come to this point where if it no longer serves me, it's no longer helping. Right. So it's like, is it helping? Is it hurting? Is it hindering? Those are kind of the questions that I kind of keep asking myself about certain things in life. And sometimes I know the answers for it and sometimes I don't. But having an awareness is, again, what this whole show is about. And with all the guests that come on, they shed light into different areas of awareness, which is just amazing and nothing that I could come up with on my own.
You cannot pour from an empty cup. And I think I'm going to speak to women, not because I'm trying to exclude the conversation around men's wellness, but that's not my experience. So we also feel that I at least think that we're very easily lured into thinking that filling our cup is allowing other people to fill it. So, in my physical, I guess, recovery, in this remembering and coming home to this relationship with my body, oh my gosh, I would drag myself into anybody's office that would have me on their table, like crawl to my chiropractor's office, fix me, crawl into acupuncture, fix me. And always with this narrative of like, someone else needs to fix me because I don't know what's going on. I'm not medically certified. I'm not, I don't have the qualifications of somebody else to, fix this broken body. But at some point, I've been so blessed that all of my own health practitioners are like, we're not healing you. You're healing yourself. We're just creating pathways for this healing to happen within yourself that your body can do. So, we're teaching you how to fill your own cup instead of just walking around with an empty cup, like, give me more, please.
That's
Fill it
so
up full,
good.
fill it.
Yeah. So this past summer, I got to spend several weeks in Maine. I have extended family out there. And I found this yoga studio about 20 minutes away. Wasn't really looking for it. I only found it because my dear friend from Ohio flew out to Maine for a weekend. We were walking downtown Waterville and she sees this flyer that has this ridiculous deal for 30 days for new clients for this yoga and bar studio. And she's like, Michaela, you have to do it. This is perfect. And I did. I mean, we're going 3 to 4 times a week. And I think what really struck me about that, and of course, I'm sobbing in my last yoga practice on like the day before I leave. I'm like, oh my God. People probably think I'm nuts. But with all the trauma that I had gone through in 2024 of going through a divorce and then my body shut down at the end of 2024, I was seeing all these doctors because blood pressure was wild. Physical body just kind of was like, and we're done. And so I was reintroduced to my body in such a way where it's like, I don't know if I've ever been this present. It's not until I take a yoga class that I'm just reminded of how much it's like this. I know I get out of bed. I know that I brush my teeth. I know that I walk to my car, drive. It's like I understand my body can do all these things. But it really is breathing into the space, allowing yourself to, be one with your body. It's like I'm just a brain walking on a body. Like until you take that time to really practice and be still, right? And then you're like, my word, how disconnected I have been until you really learn what connection is, which is just probably the most beautiful gift that yoga can give, I think. Is
Well,
like
and
welcome back to your body.
The fact that Shavasana is the most important part of the practice. And
I know.
so like if I can go to a class led by another teacher that gives me like 10 minutes in Shavasana, I'm like, yes. But from the teaching space, that's the most difficult part of the practice for some people. It's like,
Yeah.
we're going to lay here and do nothing for 4 minutes. Some people can't do it for 2 minutes, and
Yeah.
yeah, that, that's your body's time to alchemize. The stillness is when we alchemize everything, the energy moving through our bodies in a yoga practice, the what needs to move and what needs to process when we're sitting in grief, what needs to come to surface. All of our wisdom gets alchemized in the stillness.
Is there anything that we haven't said about fear that you would like to?
I think we've addressed it. I know that fear is mostly rooted in the way that we assume other people will tell a story of who we are. And as a public speaking teacher and as a coach of public speaking, even with adults, I work one on one with adults, and it has been fairly common to spend a lot of time on audience analysis. And even in the business space, right? Even in as an entrepreneur and in this space, who's your audience? Who's your target audience? Who's your who are you marketing? And we spend so much time thinking about an audience, and that's really when a lot of fear. I know that that's important, but a lot of our fears come from focusing on how other people are going to receive us.
Mm,
And so I think the more important story is the one that connects you to your message. Why is this my message? Why am I so passionate about this content? Why is this what I'm here to share? This is why I'm here, walking my purpose. If you can really just get clear on that, and you can only do that through through contemplation, reflection, stillness, solitude, then I think that fear of how other people's stories will define who you are can dissolve.
that's so good. That's so good,
I
Leslie.
know that's a little bit
Yeah.
vague. There aren't
Yeah.
I didn't provide any very specific tools. I do that in workshops, and
Yeah.
I do that, in a number of different capacities and through my writing. And so
Absolutely. What is it about the public aspect of sharing our stories? Why is that needed? In the pub
I think that we all know how important human connection is. And a big part of what we are fighting right now, I think, or what we should fight to protect you know, we're kind of being led and guided into this individualistic society and losing the sense of community. And I know that we know what it feels like when our heart connects with someone else's experience. We know what it feels like in our belly when we really are present and um, uh, can be available to listen to someone else's experience with compassion, without judgment. Just we know what that feels like and how that resonates in our bodies, which we can't deny, right? Get little goosies. And I know my students always would laugh at me. I was the crier. And so they would like, who's going to make Miss Muhlbach cry today? Because tears of joy, all kinds of tears. But I was like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And tears of celebration that we're breaking down our fears, and tears of connection. And really just what brings me to tears so often is when I get to share a safe space for someone, and when I can feel them literally just melt in my presence or like crack open. I get moved by that because I'm proud of myself as a human being for really understanding how much my presence can facilitate this connection where somebody really feels at home. And so we feel at home together.
Yeah.
And so the more stories that we can hear, the more stories that we can feel comfortable to share, then, that's our home. Stories, they're our homes that we get to share with each other, whether it's through the computer screen, or through the books we read, or ideally and ultimately through the way that we can sit, face to face, hold hands, share a hug, and share smiles, but stories are home.
Stories are home. That's so good, Leslie. Now that we live so close, there's nothing stopping us from our coffee date, really and truly, which is fantastic. So it's like we'll say goodbye now, but it's just to basically like, hey, see you later, which that's like I'm the most excited for. So as we wrap this up, Leslie, what is your next chapter? How do you see your story unfolding in this new decade and new, kind of part of life?
Well, I'm definitely feeling very excited to carry so much wisdom. And I'm not saying that I'm, the town sage or whatever, but I just have come into a space that feels so comfortable for me with my age and with my agency too, the agency and the autonomy that I have in my life right now to just create spaces that feel welcoming for other people. So I'm hoping I can move into this next stage of my life sharing my stories and experiences. I do a lot of women's work. I'm focusing a lot on really understanding cycles of nature and facilitating workshops on bringing women home to their bodies through understanding that we are indeed nature and we're a part of it. We're not separate from it. So teaching mindfulness workshops, doing some writing that I can hopefully break through the fear of just getting it out there. I do so much writing that I just don't share quite yet, but I want to build hopefully a community. It might start online this winter, actually, to get into some books together, share some writing, maybe be a space for us to just gather and share projects and creative ideas that we all have bubbling inside. So I'm looking forward to being a mentor. I'm looking forward to being um, a guide. I'm looking forward to just being a support for women of all ages that are moving through such difficult times right now, because we're being called home, but there are a lot of forces that know that when we find safety and security in our own home spaces, we can be a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
that's a whole nother podcast.
That's right. Tune in for part 2.
Yeah. So I
That's so
really
good.
want to just I want to build women's spaces where our stories and voices create a home space. So
That's so good.
trying to figure out what that might look like, building that container out right now as I'm dabbling in filmmaking.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So I'm following my dreams,
Yep.
trying to break through my own fears of
Yes.
being a newbie again. It's like
Mhm.
doing something new that
Oh,
you've
yeah.
never tried before.
Yes. Yes. That's so good. I cannot wait. I see a whole bunch of things. Now that you said film, I just see stuff. That is wonderful. Leslie, thank you so much for your time today. What an inspiration. And we'll see you later at this point.
Well, I can't wait. I can't wait. Thank you,
Yes.
Michaela, for the work that you're doing.
Yes. Thank
You're
you.
doing really good work, sister.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. I invite you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, give it a rating, and review while you're at it. It really goes a long way. And check out the show notes for all the ways to stay connected with me and our guests. Until the next episode.